think about the people you care about absolutely the most. Your family, your closest friends. Now ask yourself a tough question. Why do we so often hurt the exact people we love? Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to explore a really profound philosophy that comes directly from Life Chain Yuan founder Guy Shufeng. His teachings throw down a massive challenge to all of us. He explains exactly why we should never, ever use negativity, destruction, or tragedy to punish the people we hold dearest. Now, I know that sounds super simple on the surface, but as we unpack these ideas today, you'll see just how easily every single one of us falls into these destructive traps.
Let's start by being brutally honest with ourselves for a second. When misunderstandings inevitably pop up with your loved ones, how do you actually handle them? I mean, it's a completely universal problem, right? Everyone argues with their family. Disagreements and frustrations are just a normal part of being human. But Guy Shufeng really urges us to look deeper at how our reactions in those heat-of-the-moment situations might actually be making the conflicts worse instead of solving them. We have to ask ourselves, are we trying to fix the problem, or are we secretly just trying to punish the other person?
Let's look at how this plays out in Section 1, the reality of family conflict. Look closely at the dynamic between parents and kids. According to Zhu Feng, children will often use tantrums and crying as a tool to literally coerce their parents into giving them what they want. It's manipulation. And if parents don't correct this gently, those kids grow up relying on throwing fits, which just sets them up for a lifelong cycle of dissatisfaction. On the flip side, though, when parents are dealing with a disobedient child, they sometimes snap with incredibly harsh words, or even go to the extreme of threatening to completely cut off the parent-child relationship. Both of these approaches are just so inherently destructive. They're essentially using emotional distress as a weapon.
And this toxic dynamic usually only gets worse in adult relationships. Between spouses, a simple argument can quickly devolve into dramatic outbursts. We're talking yelling, throwing insults, violence, or even terrifying threats of self-harm. And what about siblings or in-laws? With extended family, the disharmony is often handled through this icy, cold indifference. People gossip behind each other's backs, they shift the blame, or they just cut off contact completely. But here's the thing. None of these methods actually solve the underlying frustration. They just deepen the pain and make fixing the relationship infinitely harder.
Which brings us to a really devastating reality. Shufeng points out that often suicide isn't necessarily born out of genuine despair, but rather it's an extreme attempt to punish loved ones. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people take their own lives worldwide, and strained family relationships play a massive role in that. When it's used as a method of retaliation, it is just the ultimate tragedy. It leaves the surviving loved ones completely shattered, racked with guilt and an unspeakable, lasting pain. It is literally the ultimate toxic reaction.
So why do these reactions fail so miserably? Let's get into Section 2, why negativity breeds despair.
Shufeng frames this up with a really undeniable law of nature. He says an apple tree bears apples and thorny bushes make the path impossible. That's a brilliant visual. You simply cannot plant a seed of resentment and expect to harvest a loving relationship. A tragedy just cannot create a comedy. If you approach a family dispute armed with thorns, well, the path forward becomes completely blocked for everyone involved.
Basically, this is the law of attraction in action. Things vibrating at the same frequency resonate with each other. Like attracts like. So if you bring ugliness, destruction, and pessimism into a conflict, you are absolutely going to invite more negativity and despair right back into your life. But conversely, beauty attracts beauty. If you want to cultivate warm, harmonious relationships with your loved ones, you have to rely on positive, optimistic approaches. Okay, so how do we actually put that into practice? That brings us to Section 3, Guy Shufeng's Life Chain Yuan principles.
First things first, we need to clearly define who our loved ones actually are, because it's a lot broader than you might think. Yes, it includes those who share our bloodline, our traditional family, and it definitely includes anyone who has raised or cared for us. But, according to Life Chain Yuan teachings, which actually draw inspiration from Jesus Christ, this definition also extends to your spiritual peers, basically anyone who follows the path of the greatest creator. These are the people we are bound to, and the people we must protect from our own negativity.
Guy Shufeng uses this incredibly powerful imagery to set up the rules of engagement with these loved ones. He says, complaints are poisonous arrows. Just picture that for a second. When you vent unchecked negativity at a family member, you're not just letting off steam. You are actively firing a toxic weapon that damages their soul and poisons the entire relationship.
To stop firing those arrows, Life Chain Yuan uses a very specific playbook, and it requires a massive mindset shift. The rules? Praise way more and criticize way less. You have to completely stop picking faults and talking behind people's backs. We're also challenged to look inward, to recognize that jealousy is really just the soul being ugly, and that constantly comparing yourself to others is actually a form of malice. But the absolute golden rule: never, ever use your loved ones as a dumping ground for your negative emotions.
Now, I know you might be thinking, okay, that sounds amazing in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Well, yes. In Life Chain Yuan's second home communities, they practice these exact principles every single day, and the results speak for themselves. By consciously rejecting that urge to punish each other and leaning into the laws of attraction, members report living in genuine warmth and harmony. They have almost zero disputes, arguments, or conflicts. It really proves that when you change what you put into a relationship, you completely change what you get out of it.
So, let's wrap this up with Section 4, choosing harmony over tragedy.
When you're in the thick of it and your temper flares up, Xu Feng gives us a super clear, actionable method. Step 1. Pause. Whenever you feel tempted to lash out or be passive-aggressive, you literally have to physically stop before reacting. Step 2. Remind yourself, these are my loved ones. Step 3. Consciously refuse to approach them with ugliness in your heart or on your face. You have to actively say no to your own toxic instincts. And finally, step 4. Choose to handle the situation with peace, tolerance, understanding, and love.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Next time you're heated and you're tempted to react with ugliness, will you take that pause? Will you remember that they're your loved ones? If you want a happy life and a bright future, the choice is literally in your hands. Are you going to continue the exhausting cycle of tragic punishment? Or are you going to step up and choose harmony? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope Xu Feng's insights have given you a powerful new tool to use in your own relationships. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.